Welcome back to the Top 1% Book Club. We've got a great deep dive for you today.
Yeah, it should be a good one.
All about, getting things done,
Hmm.
reaching those goals, really unlocking that potential we all have.
That's the dream.
And, we're tapping into a book that a lot of you requested, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. So let's get right into it, see what makes grit tick.
Well, Duckworth makes this point right away, and it's really interesting. She kind of dismantles this idea that raw talent is, everything when it comes to success.
Right, right. We've all heard those stories about these so-called natural geniuses.
Exactly. But what she finds is it's the combination of passion and perseverance that's what really moves the needle.
So more a marathon than a sprint.
I like that analogy.
I'm stealing it. So Duckworth opens the book with this study from West Point, their infamously tough beast barracks training.
Oh, yeah, I remember that grueling stuff.
And you'd think, going in, that high SAT scores, impressive resumes, all that stuff would be the key.
Yeah. Turns out, not so much.
Nope. So what was it then? What separated those who thrived from those who, well, didn't?
Duckworth found that it all boiled down to grit. The cadets with more of it, they just persevered, plain and simple.
Okay, but it's not just about being tough, right? There's got to be something more nuanced going on.
Oh, definitely. So to really answer that, we got to go back to the source, what is grit, according to Duckworth.
Yeah, let's break it down.
It's like this, it's not falling in love with your goals, it's staying in love. That deep, deep passion, the kind that fuels you to keep going no matter what, that's grit.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. It's not just hard work for the sake of hard work. It's about that deep connection to what you're doing.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And it's especially important when things get tough.
And they will. So Duckworth breaks grit down into four main parts, right?
Oh.
Interest, practice, purpose, and hope. Let's start with interest. I think I get that one, but what's the real key here?
Well, it's all about finding that genuine, intrinsic joy in what you're doing. Like, it has to be something that truly pulls you in, captivates you, because that internal drive is going to be crucial, especially when you hit those inevitable roadblocks.
Because let's face it, if you're not genuinely interested, you're not going to stick with it when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
And speaking of tough, that brings us to practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a feeling this isn't just any old practice.
You got that right. We're talking about deliberate practice here. Pushing yourself past those comfort zones, figuring out where your weaknesses are, and actively trying to improve them.
So it's about being really intentional with your effort.
Exactly. That focused, purposeful effort, that's what hones your skills over time.
Okay, I'm seeing a connection here. Deliberate practice, pushing boundaries, that makes me think about flow state. You ever heard of that?
Absolutely. That feeling where you're just totally absorbed in what you're doing, time kind of melts away. Yeah, it's the fascinating concept.
And I feel like they're related somehow.
Oh, they definitely are. Deliberate practice and flow state, they actually complement each other really well.
Really? How so?
Think of it like this deliberate practice is like laying the groundwork. It's that focused preparation, building those skills.
I see. So then flow state kind of emerges from that foundation.
Exactly. When you've honed those skills through deliberate practice, then when you're in a situation where you need them, that's where flow state can kick in. It's like your skills match the challenge perfectly and boom, you're in the zone.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, so we've got the interest, the practice, but now let's add another layer here, purpose. Why does any of this matter in the big picture?
Purpose. This is what gives grit that extra dimension. Because it's not just about working hard, it's about asking yourself, why am I doing this? What's the bigger picture here? How does this connect to something beyond just me?
So it's finding that deeper meaning in your work.
Exactly. People with true grit, they often find their work deeply meaningful. It's not just about, building a wall. It's about building a cathedral.
Love that analogy. It's like that sense of purpose that gives everything more weight, makes it feel truly important. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. Interest, practice, purpose. But we've got one more piece of the puzzle. Hope. And I'm guessing this is more than just wishing and hoping for the best.
Oh, definitely more than just wishing. Hope, in this context, it's about having that unshakable belief that you can and will overcome those setbacks. It's like you see those challenges as opportunities to grow, not reasons to give up.
It's like that saying, you get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8.
Exactly. It's that inner voice that says, I can do this, even when things feel impossible.
All right, I got to ask, even if I don't think I'm naturally a gritty person, Can I actually develop this quality?
Absolutely. You can. It's not like, some fixed trait, like you're either born with it or you're not.
That's good to hear. So more like a muscle you can build.
Exactly. Think of it that way. A muscle you can strengthen over time.
Okay, I like that. But how do we start? Where do we even begin to flex those grit muscles?
Well, Duckworth points to extracurricular activities as a really great starting point.
Extracurriculars. Interesting. Like what kinds of things are we talking about here?
Things like sports, music, even volunteering,
Yeah.
anything that requires you to commit to push yourself, and importantly, to deal with setbacks.
I see. So it's about those experiences where you have to, persevere.
Yeah.
Work as part of a team. Learn to bounce back when things don't go your way.
Right. It's like a training ground for grit.
Makes sense. Yeah, those are valuable lessons no matter what you're doing in life.
Absolutely. And there's another aspect Duckworth talks about. It's the power of culture. Like
Mhm.
being around other gritty people that can actually be contagious.
Oh, interesting. So it's like their grit can rub off on you.
Exactly. Like find those gritty communities, surround yourself with people who embody those values of passion and perseverance, and their energy can really fuel your own.
So find your tribe, so to speak.
I like that. Think about it like the Sisu spirit of the Finns. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so. Tell me more.
It's this concept of like this unwavering perseverance they have, even in the face of, crazy adversity, almost like this collective grit that's become part of their national identity.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it seems like grit is also about mindset, about who you believe yourself to be.
Totally. Gritty people, they see themselves as people who don't give up. It's part of their core identity.
It's like giving up isn't even an option for them.
Pretty much. And they don't view those challenges as threats, but as opportunities to learn and grow. That's a key distinction.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Duckworth talks about finding that balance between support and challenge. It's not about just being tough on yourself all the time, right?
Right. It's about having the right kind of support, the kind that actually encourages growth. One idea she talks about is this concept of wise feedback.
Wise feedback, what's that?
It's feedback that's both honest and encouraging. It acknowledges the effort someone's put in, but it also provides specific guidance for improvement.
So it's like setting high expectations, but also making sure the person feels believed in, like they can reach those expectations.
Exactly. She talks about this study where students who got that kind of feedback, the high expectations plus the belief, they were way more likely to put in the effort to actually improve.
That's powerful stuff. Shows how important it is to create that environment where people feel supported and challenged. Makes me think about parenting, too. How do we instill this in our kids?
Oh, for sure. Parenting is huge in all of this. Duckworth talks about how crucial it is for parents to actually model grit for their kids.
To walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Precisely. Kids, they learn by observing, right? So if they see their parents chasing their own goals with passion and determination, well, they're much more likely to pick up on those values themselves.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Now let's talk about talent for a second. Duckworth, she acknowledges that talent does matter, but she emphasizes that effort is what makes that talent really productive.
Right, talent, it's like the starting point. But it's the consistent effort, the dedication, that really unlocks its true potential.
It's like that saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
I love that. It's so true. Talent without effort, it's like a seed that never gets planted. It has all this potential, but without the right nurturing, it'll never blossom.
That's a great analogy. So it sounds like we need to nurture both our talent and our grit.
Exactly. And a big part of that is developing a growth mindset.
Ah, yes, the growth mindset. We've heard about this before, but remind us, what does that mean in this context?
It's this belief that your abilities, your skills, they can be developed, through dedication, hard work. It's not fixed. It's constantly evolving.
So you're not limited by where you are now. You can always get better.
Exactly. And a growth mindset is super important for cultivating grit because it lets you see those challenges not as, threats, but as opportunities to learn and grow.
And that makes you more likely to stick with it when things get tough.
Exactly. You're empowered to embrace that process of continuous improvement, knowing that you can always learn and grow.
Now, this isn't just about individual growth, right?
Yeah.
Didn't Duckworth talk about how this can impact like entire organizations?
Oh, absolutely. A culture of grit that can have a huge ripple effect. Imagine, an organization where everyone's committed to excellence, where setbacks are seen as learning opportunities, and where everyone's supporting each other's growth.
Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing. So it's like taking that individual grit and multiplying it.
Exactly. It creates this collective force that drives innovation, fuels resilience,
Yeah.
propels the organization forwards like, all those little engines that could, all pulling together.
Perfect analogy.
Mm.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into grit, I think there's one more question we should touch on. Can you have too much grit?
Oh, that's a great point. Is there a point where this, relentless pursuit of goals becomes detrimental? Can someone be so focused that they end up neglecting other parts of their lives? It's definitely something to think about. And Duckworth, she actually addresses that in her research. But from what she's found, people don't usually regret being gritty.
Yeah, when you think about it, it makes sense. Grit, it's about pursuing those things you're truly passionate about, going all in on what really matters to you. So it's hard to imagine someone feeling like they, overdid it on that front.
Right. The problem arises, though, when grit is I guess you could say misapplied. Like when someone's pursuing a goal that, well, maybe it clashes with their values or even, ends up hurting others. It's really important to make sure our grit is aimed at those things that are both meaningful and ethical.
Ah, yeah, that's a really important point. It's not just about blindly chasing something. It's got to be aligned with, who you are and what you believe in. So as we wrap up our deep dive into grit, let's bring it back to our listeners. How can they take these insights and, actually apply them to their own lives, their own goals?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway here is your potential. It's probably way bigger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, especially yourself.
We can be our own worst enemies sometimes, can't we?
Definitely. We get in our own way. But the truth is, with that passion, the perseverance, and, the right support, we can achieve some pretty incredible things.
Remember that story about David, the student who was told he wasn't ready for advanced math?
Yeah, what happened to him?
Well, he ended up becoming a rocket scientist.
Wow, that's amazing. Talk about proving those doubters wrong.
Right. It just shows you that talent, it's not the whole story.
Yeah.
So I guess the question for our listeners is, what's that one goal that really lights you up, that dream you might be putting off because of, self-doubt or fear? What steps can you take, starting today, to cultivate those 4 elements of grit?
I love that question. And honestly, it doesn't have to be anything huge or complicated. Start small. Think about, what are you truly interested in? What are those activities that make you lose track of time?
That's a good point. It should feel more like play than work.
Exactly. Once you've got those passions identified, commit to practicing those skills really intentionally and with focus. Don't just go through the motions. Remember, it's that deliberate practice that's key for growth.
Yeah, we talked about that, pushing those boundaries a little bit,
Yeah.
but not so much that it feels overwhelming.
That's the sweet spot right there. Challenged, but not completely overwhelmed. And then think about that purpose piece. How can your efforts contribute to something bigger than yourself? How can what you're doing benefit others, maybe make a positive impact on the world?
That's where it really starts to feel meaningful.
For sure. And when you've got that connection, that sense of purpose, it fuels your motivation and gives your efforts this whole new level of meaning.
Right. And how about that unwavering hope? How do we cultivate that belief in ourselves that we can, handle whatever life throws our way?
Think back to those times when you faced setbacks. Things got tough, but you didn't give up. Channel that resilience, that belief in your ability to overcome those challenges. Because at the end of the day, grit, it's not about being perfect. It's about getting up one more time than you fall down.
Yeah.
So embrace that journey, with all its ups and downs, knowing that each step, no matter how small, it's bringing you closer to realizing your full potential.
So there you have it, folks, a blueprint for cultivating grit, for tapping into that inner strength and resilience that can help us achieve, well, extraordinary things. So go out there and make it happen.